Alright guys, most of you know there was a power cut in London at rush hour on a Friday, which was yesterday. Most of the businesses and, what I'm trying to say is most of the houses and businesses were out of power. So this is part two of what's happened. I did a video before talking about a power cut in London yesterday and a Friday. So this is part two, like I say. And yeah, let's get into the video. Thank you for liking and commenting on the other videos, guys, of what I've done, and it always helps, and I appreciate it. And thank you for subscribing and commenting and watching my videos. Yeah, my words are a bit jumbled up. I do apologise. Sometimes when I'm trying to explain something, my words get a bit jumbled up. But anyway, let's get into the video.
Passengers going nowhere. Railway stations plunged into darkness and trains grinding to a halt, forcing commuters to abandon this Great Northern service when it came to a sudden stop. Up and down the country, nearly 1 million customers and many more workers and commuters were caught up in Friday evening rush hour chaos as a fault on the national grid cut power to many parts of England and Wales.
I don't know when it's going to come up again. Is it going to be hours? Is it going to be overnight? I don't know. So there's no replacement bus service, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Been nothing but delays showing up on the board and cancellations, so I thought I'll hang about and see what happens, but unfortunately now we're being told to leave the station.
We got stuck on the underground. The power failed, electric went, and they had to restart the engine. Very hot and sweaty for about 20 minutes on the Victoria line.
We got stuck on it. I was scared. Max probably needed an inhaler.
About 500,000 customers in Wales, South West England and the Midlands, and 300,000 customers in South East England were left without power. 110,000 in Yorkshire and North East England were also affected, alongside 26,000 in North West England. But the ongoing problem is the impact on travel, as trains and planes across the UK are still facing delays and disruption. There were reports that vital services at Ipswich Hospital, which treats 3,000 patients a day, were affected after their backup generators failed to kick in. East Suffolk and North East Essex NHS Foundation Trust has confirmed they lost power there for 30 minutes, but aren't aware of any injuries caused by the blackout. The National Grid has now confirmed we experienced issues with 2 power generators, causing loss of power in selected UK areas. The issue is now resolved and the system has returned to normal. Anyone continuing to experience a local issue should contact their local distribution network operator for assistance. But although this evening's blackout was short-lived for most, the knock-on effects are still being felt tonight.
Well, at least the power's back on now.
Without boats, Venice would be nothing, but it was never built for these times. All too often, the picturesque skyline is overshadowed by gargantuan cruise liners, sailing into the lagoon and damaging the city's foundations, ecosystem, and more. This crash in June, the final straw, injuring several passengers on a far smaller tourist boat. So now the biggest ships are set to be banned from Venice's historic and fragile centre.
We were very lucky that nothing really happened besides a small accident. But I always say that Venice is like a big cake. So that cruise ships, they are like a knife on the cake. Venice can collapse in 1 second.
Over the last decade, the battle has become increasingly acrimonious. Often, this is the welcome for tourists arriving by sea. And another near miss last month for a 93,000-ton vessel during a summer storm only intensified the Italian government's desire to act. The temporary solution is to dock on the other side of the lagoon. Eventually, a new port is likely to be built. However, most of the 35 million annual tourists strolling the streets come by land or by air. And so even if this measure eases the waterways, the overcrowding in the city will remain. Richard Pallo, News at 10.
I'm going to do a few videos in here like I did before. I always have a few videos all the time to show, but right, so
The land's ability to sustain us is fast running out, and we rapidly need to change how we use it, particularly when it comes to what we eat. That's the conclusion of more than 100 climate scientists advising governments around the world.
It's really urgent. It's urgent because we are feeling the impacts now. It's also urgent because the more time
talking about food
the more
and stuff,
land is affected by climate, and the fewer
climate
options
change.
we will have.
When it comes to land use, farming is the biggest contributor to climate change. Globally, it accounts for about a third of human greenhouse gas emissions, and of that, animals have the greatest impact. So here's the beef. Grazing animals like cattle need quite a lot of land. They're also not that efficient in converting their food, the grass, into protein. What's more, they burp and otherwise excrete like potent greenhouse gases like methane, which increases their contribution to climate change. So what does that mean for many of us meat eaters tucking into a summer barbecue? The Moore family used to eat 7 meat meals per week. This equates to more than 1.5 tons of carbon each year, the equivalent of 5 return flights to Malaga, and requires land the size of 17 tennis courts. Now they're cutting down to 3 meat meals a week.
I'm liking it. It's good. It's a nice variety of food. You can get stuck in a humdrum of the normal meals that you've cooked during the week. So it's nice to try something new.
I'd rather go to Malaga than for the sake of spaghetti bolognese, but yeah, that's quite a worry. I wouldn't have thought it was that bad.
I don't keep on having to do something to the environment where it keeps on killing and killing, and the environment keeps on, well, breaking.
Should we cut out meat altogether? By one analysis, a 30% reduction in meat could help UK farming get its emissions to zero.
What we need to ensure is that we eat an ethically produced and responsibly produced balanced diet. And meat is part of that balanced diet. Vegetables are part of that balanced diet. We need to be so careful we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then in 10 or 20 years' time, we've got a malnourished nation. And we've actually achieved nothing. So it is about balance.
We don't all have to go vegan just yet, but accept that we and the rest of the world urgently need to rethink our relationship with the land on which all of our lives depend.
Well, got a really itchy beard, as you can see. Have a shave.
Back to face justice after 16 years on the run. The man in the blue shirt being led through this police station is Shahid Mohammed, about to hear details of a charge of mass murder that he had fled to Pakistan to avoid.
In relation to the murder of 8 people in a house fire at 40 Osborne Road, Huddersfield.
8 members of the Shisti family died in that fire, the youngest just 6 months old. Today a jury found Shahid Mohammed guilty of their murder. The court heard petrol had been poured through the letterbox of the Shisti family home, an act of revenge in an argument over a relationship that Shahid Mohammed objected to.
Me and my mother, we both jumped from the window. I survived and my mother, she didn't.
Mohammed Shafiq, who lost 8 members of his family that night, was in court to hear the verdict.
Today justice has been done. He's going to spend a long time behind bars, and I hope life means life in this case.
Shahid Mohammed was being investigated as a suspect following the fire, but skipped bail and fled to Pakistan. In his absence, 3 other men were convicted for their roles in the arson attack. It was 2015, 13 years after the fatal fire, that Shahid Mohammed was arrested in Pakistan before finally being extradited back to the UK last year to face trial.
It really was like finding a needle in a haystack, trying to locate him over there. But again, once we had found him, then he's fought the extradition process every step of the way, which has again added to the distress for the family. But justice has been done now.
Surviving members of the family brought photographs of those they lost to court. Tomorrow they'll hear how long the man responsible must spend in jail. Paul Davis, ITV News.
I'm going to see what else is on.
The mother of Grammy-nominated rapper A$AP Rocky here arriving at a Swedish court today for the conclusion of a trial the US president and megastar Kanye West tried to stop from even taking place. It mattered so much to Donald Trump, he even sent this man, the US government's expert on hostage negotiations.
How difficult would you say the hostage situation is here in Sweden right now?
Thank you. This is the first photo today of A$AP Rocky, real name Rakim Myers, celebrating his release with friends.
Tell me, do his thing.
Having defended himself all week in court against charges of assault, he's now allowed to leave the country before the judge delivers his verdict in a fortnight. Today, the president celebrated Rocky's release, tweeting that he would now be on his way home to the United States from Sweden. It was a rocky week. Get home ASAP. This fight on a Swedish pavement started it all. A$AP Rocky, here in white, says he acted in self-defense but spent the last 4 weeks in prison. Though it was halfway around the world, under pressure from Kanye West and wife Kim Kardashian, Donald Trump expended considerable energy demanding Rocky be freed.
Many members of the African American community have called me, friends of mine, and said, could you help? So I personally don't know A$AP Rocky, but I can tell you that he has tremendous support from the African American community in this country. And when I say African American, I think I can really say from everybody in this country, because we're all one.
When Sweden resisted the president's demands and lectured him publicly on the independence of their judiciary, Donald Trump angrily denounced their decision. Some think he picked this unusual fight with a foreign government over a rapper he does not personally know to win votes.
It is astonishing, though. I mean, we have had an American resident, Jamal Khashoggi, killed in the Saudi embassy in Turkey in the most brutal way. This administration's done almost nothing. We look at the total numbers, and he only gets 9% or something of the African-American vote. But in a state like Pennsylvania or Michigan, if you can go from 9% to 12%, that's not nothing, you know.
The president on the South Lawn at the White House in the last hour welcomed Rocky's release, though was uncharacteristically restrained.
They're going to be making a final decision, I guess, over the next 10 days. So I won't interfere with the process.
But after weeks of being accused of racism, he may hope that the fact Rocky is finally free, even if only briefly, counts for something. Allegra Stratton, News at 10, Washington.
As the military operation.
Next video.
As some warn of a global climate emergency, there's worrying evidence the UK is getting hotter. Scientists analysed temperatures since the 19th century and found the top 10 warmest years have all occurred within the last 2 decades. For more than a century, this land in Cambridgeshire has been farmed by Tom Clark's family. In that time, they felt the impact of our changing weather patterns.
So 125 years ago, when my great-grandfather started the farm, I think you could, well, they did, used to farm by the calendar. Nowadays, you don't know what's coming. So as farmers, we are absolutely on the front line of climate change. Last year, we saw the beast from the east, and then we sort of had a record-breaking drought. And we hold the biggest risks for our business and our livelihoods and what we do.
Across 1,000 acres, they grow wheat, potatoes and sugar beet.
All this food here growing is growing about 2 meters below sea level.
That means it's at risk of flooding, and with the UK getting warmer and wetter, Tom fears for the future.
I'm the 4th generation in my family to farm this land. I don't want this land to be underwater. I want my children to be able to have the choice whether to go into farming or not, and not have that decision made for them by the climate.
Just last week, the UK's hottest ever temperature was recorded here in Cambridge, reaching 38.7 degrees Celsius. Scientists say it's yet more evidence of climate change and that we need to act.
I think now is the time for us to take global leadership, to invest in the research, the innovation, the scale of technologies and policies that are required to take us towards a clean future.
Last week, even trains struggled in the heat as power cables melted. Some say the government must now improve our infrastructure to cope with what's to come. This new neighbourhood on the outskirts of Cambridge has been designed to be future-proof.
So what this grill is actually designed to do is it takes in the cool air from outside.
Buildings here use natural ventilation and solar power, all to help tackle climate change.
Most of the measures that we put in place are about thinking about the future. We have many centuries of past involvement here in Cambridge, and we are planning for the future centuries, not just the next few years.
The government has pledged to cut carbon emissions in the UK to almost zero by 2050, so perhaps communities like this could become a model for the future. Rebecca Barry, News at 10, Cambridge.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic candidates for
Videos after videos. So I could say in this one really, but it's weird.
Holidays are to relax, but stress is mounting on our travel money. Those heading off abroad could be facing their most costly trip in years.
I guess it's an inconvenience, but it's not going to stop everyone from sticking to what they arrange and to trying to get away maybe once or twice a year. You've got 2 children and, you know, you've got that cost to consider. It's a big part of your budget. So, yeah, I think it makes a big difference.
A typical dollar rate today is over 7% less than last year, a 2-year low. And today's euro rate is down about 3%. Along with currency fluctuation, prices have also risen in many resorts. So a family meal for 4 on the Costa del Sol would have cost a bit over £40 last year. Now it's almost 60. That meal in Cyprus was just over £62, but is now above 73.
You save for your holiday and you set your budget, then right at the last minute you get whacked by these new lower exchange rates. But there are ways to lessen the impact.
Jasmine Birtles has some timely travel tips.
So don't get your money at the airport unless you've booked it before online. The best thing to do is to shop around. Banks are the obvious place to go for your money, but it's not just there. You can go to department stores, supermarkets. At the post office, one thing you can do is get a prepaid card where you preload it with money, and so you lock in the rate.
But how far your money goes depends on where you go, with some destinations much kinder on the pound this summer.
In Turkey, where the sterling is doing 6% better than the local Turkish lira compared to last summer. Same with the Icelandic krona, where you can get 7% more for your money.
But with the pound falling faster than a beach towel in some destinations, planning holiday spending is more important than ever. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Ladies and gentlemen,
There's a lot of news I'm showing today.
This is one superhero film with a happy ending for its makers, Disney and Marvel. Avengers Endgame will be the biggest movie ever at the box office. $2.79 billion made from worldwide cinema sales make it the highest grossing film in history.
Well, obviously you've got the might of Disney Studios behind it, a lot of money into marketing, but it still has to be a good product. And this really is a strong film. It was critically acclaimed. There's been great word of mouth, very involving story, funny, major stars.
It's edged ahead of Avatar, the sci-fi epic released 10 years ago, which has been reigning box office champion since then. That's made nearly $2.79 billion, ahead of Titanic with 2.1, and the $2 billion made by 2015's Star Wars The Force Awakens. The Ovis. This is the 22nd film in Marvel's cinematic universe, featuring characters including Captain America, Thor and Spider-Man. And several more have just been announced. Fans of this fantasy series could help break its own record in future. Robin Dwyer, ITV News.
More new films to look forward to, guys, if you like your Avenger films and your Marvel. That's what I should say anyway. I mean, you know, a lot of people do like the films like that. Really. Right. This was 3 days ago in the Kashmir lockdown in India and Pakistan.
The Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has reacted angrily to the decision by the Indian government to revoke special status for Kashmir. He has threatened to report India to the United Nations Security Council, and he says Pakistan will fight this move at every forum. India says that the decision to remove special status is needed to ensure security. Indian-administered Kashmir, meanwhile, remains in lockdown. Here's our diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams.
A state in lockdown, all but cut off from the outside world. India has flooded Jammu and Kashmir with tens of thousands of extra troops and police. Phone lines and the internet have been blocked since Sunday. The result, an atmosphere of uncertainty and apprehension. But some are happy. Among the state's non-Muslim minority, expressions of support for the government's bold move. This is an historic decision by the Modi government. A very big thing has been done by the government. A priceless gift has been given to the country, which one wouldn't have thought possible in a lifetime. Across this vast country, there's little doubt something decisive has happened. The Indian government breaking with more than 70 years of history.
All news from Kashmir, a once peaceful mountain state.
The former princely state joined Hindu-majority India in 1947, but only after India gave it special status. Muslim-majority Pakistan clings to a rival claim. The two countries have gone to war over Jammu and Kashmir 4 times. Since 1972, the area has been split.
Pakistan and India there,
along
see?
the so-called line of control.
And you got Kashmir there, you got Indian. Yeah.
Yesterday's announcement stripping Jammu and Kashmir of its special status caused uproar in the Indian parliament. The government of Narendra Modi says it's necessary for security and the state's economic development. Critics point to a different motivation.
The idea that Kashmir requires or even deserves any special status constitutionally is beyond the pale for him, because his perspective is very much the sort of centralizing force of Indian politics that is a sort of Hindu nationalist mobilization behind his election and his recent re-election.
In Pakistan, outrage and a sense of crisis. Kashmir is an incendiary issue. Successive governments have sponsored violent groups there. As Parliament meets to discuss the issue, the country's military has warned of retaliation.
Kashmir is now officially invaded by India. It is an illegal step. It is unconstitutional.
Pakistan seems poised to take the dispute to the UN Security Council. India says Jammu and Kashmir is a domestic issue, and all the while, from the streets at the heart of this crisis, an uneasy silence.
Soldiers on the streets there, guys.
Let's go to Islamabad now. We can speak to our correspondent, Asif Faruqi. Asif, tell us more about what the Prime Minister's been saying.
The Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan just addressed the joint session of the parliament, which was convened to discuss situation in Kashmir. And he basically built on the narrative that Pakistan government is saying since yesterday, that whatever India has done will lead to regional instability and will be detrimental to the peace in the region. He very clearly said that India will obviously try to suppress voices in Kashmir, which will lead to further violence and attacks against Indian state, and that India could blame on Pakistan, that it has already been doing. And at that point, Imran Khan was very clear in saying that if that happens, and if India takes action against Pakistan this time around, it can lead to a conventional war between the two countries. He didn't stop there, but he also added that this time around, a conventional war will not stay conventional, but it can lead to a nuclear conflict. So basically, he said he was not blackmailing, nuclear blackmailing the international community, but was stating the facts that the situation in the region is very, very critical, and international community should take notice of it.
It is a very dramatic statement. What exactly does he want the UN to do?
Pakistan has been saying since yesterday that UN should come in and intervene and try to reverse what India has done. Pakistan and India have been to UN for the last many decades. There have been dozens of resolutions passed by the UN, but none of those have been very successful in dealing with this issue. Imran Khan wants the government of Pakistan to go back to United Nations and take this issue and actually lodge a complaint against India that it has violated one more resolution of the United Nations, which speaks for the right of self-determination for the Kashmiri people.
We're hearing very little from Indian-administered Kashmir. There was a security crackdown there and very little coming out. What about the Pakistani line? What about the other side of Kashmir?
There have been protests since yesterday. As soon as the news was flashed on Pakistani television channel, there were protests in Pakistani side of Kashmir. The angry protesters were demanding that India should reverse this decision, and what they see it as an Indian conspiracy to change the demography of the state of Kashmir. As you know, that state is divided between India and Pakistan, largely Muslim state. By allowing the non-Muslims or non-Kashmiris to buy land and property in India and to get jobs in Kashmir, Pakistani protesters think that it's a conspiracy against the state of Kashmir and people of Kashmir, and they are being stripped of their own identity and not just by their conventional rights.
Asif Faruqi, thank you for bringing us right up to date from Islamabad.
What is this world coming to, guys? And I'm sure a lot of you guys probably ask that question every day, but then the earth is changing all the time, but no excuse though. I think I may leave it in this stream. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me again. And please like, comment, subscribe, share these videos with friends. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.